My name is Sasha. I'm in grade 11 and I'm in the IB program.
My name is Samuel Ivan Friesenbierzel. I'm in grade 11 in the French immersion program at Kelvin High School.
My name is Vida Ebadi. I'm in grade 9 and I'm currently enrolled in the French immersion program here at Kelvin High School.
I'm Carly. I am in grade 12 and I am in the French immersion program.
Well, currently I'm just in the choir, but I do the musical and in the Holiday Breakfast team.
I am involved in 3 choirs at this school and Ultimate Frisbee currently.
You get to meet a lot of people, hang out with friends, and for the Holiday Breakfast you do it for a good cause, so it's all nice.
I did the ASPER program. We got to learn a lot. It was about the Holocaust and human rights. So yeah, and we got to go on a trip to Washington. So yeah, that was really cool.
I am not involved in any extracurricular activities at Kelvin. My work takes up a lot of my time, and grade 12 is very stressful.
I decided to join choir because singing is a large part of my background. Both my parents are musicians, and music is a way for me to, let my emotion out and such. It's also just good. It's good for the soul.
Grant Park. Because we play them in all our games, and we're better.
Probably Grant Park, but I don't know why. It's just everybody says it. It's for sports, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I'd say probably Grant Park. It's kind of just always seemed like that, even in grade 9. It's just always been instilled in us.
Probably Grant Park. I don't know. It's always whenever you ask anybody at the school, they always say Grant Park. It's always Grant Park, and I think it's mostly because of football. But aside from football, I wouldn't know who's our biggest rival.
A lot of high-waisted stuff. A lot of I guess older trends that are coming back, like high-waisted jeans and army boots and dresses and stuff. So yeah.
For a lot of guys, it's really just the jeans and the tee or the shorts and the tee.
Probably the Lululemon leggings. Pretty much every girl at Kelvin has those. For guys, lots of them wear snapbacks or plaid. Sometimes not a good look, but they make it work.
Shirts and pants. I don't know.
Girls tends to vary, but summertime, short shorts, flip-flops.
Everyone should aspire to dress like Riley Black, and that's pretty much it.
I feel like a lot of people wear them just because it's what everyone else is wearing.
Personally, for me, a lot of independent people don't seem affected by peer pressure, but I've noticed that for a lot of people who are new to the school, either in grade 9 or just come in for their first year, like grade 11 or 10, and it's their first year, it can be a little harder on them if their self-esteem isn't as high as other people or they aren't as independent. But Kelvin has a very good community and they're very accepting, so I don't see a whole lot of issues with peer pressure that much.
Peer pressure at Kelvin, I honestly don't think there's any, but that's just with the group of friends I hang out with.
It's not that bad once you get older, but when you first get into high school, you feel it a lot.
It's definitely to do with the kind of people you hang out with.
I mean, a little, I guess. Not exactly in a way where someone's tormenting you to do a certain thing, but I guess just when you see the majority of people doing a certain thing, obviously I think you're going to be kind of pressured into doing it.
In Kelvin, there's a lot of very accepting people. Personally, when I came here, I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. Kelvin offers a variety of extracurricular activities that help a lot of people to socially benefit from this school.
It really feels like a family here, and a lot of people are really friendly. I don't know, you can make a friend pretty easily just by saying hi to someone and introducing yourself and just become friends.
I think the most positive aspect is that we all just kind of blend together. There are certain areas of the school where certain groups hang out, and where the Kingsway Doors, all the hockey guys hang out there, but for the most part I think that we all get along pretty well together.
I think that diversity is really great. I think that it's so cool to be in a school where you find so many different people, and that maybe you don't know all the people, but it's great to see, that not everyone's exactly the same, that we're not all just Barbie dolls, and we have different thoughts, and we have different different aspects of life, I guess, and different things that we're interested in, and we're not all the same.
Probably the different cliques that hang out at the doors. Like, there are certain doors where I don't want to walk through there when I park my car in the morning because I don't want to have to deal with walking past certain groups of people.
Jeez, people can be very conceited in this school. You have a lot of big distinct groups of people that are into different things. Like, you have jockey kind of people and artsy kind of people, and if you don't aspire to what they think is cool, then you'll definitely be talked about in a negative way. So there's that.
I guess sometimes, maybe since just because there's so many people, there's a lot of gossip that goes around.
I'd probably say that some of the classes can be very big, and we have about 1,400 kids at the school, so like one-on-one time with the teacher is less common in a lot of classes, especially in, I would say, the English courses. There's the smaller classes in French and IB that make it easier for the teacher to do one-on-one, and you have to go out of your way to get extra help from a tutor or from a teacher.
Bullying definitely does occur at Kelvin, and I don't think that it's reported, period, so I don't think they would be enforced at all.
I guess I haven't seen bullying to an extent at Kelvin, but I'm sure that it still does happen.
I think it probably does, more so within like smaller groups, but I don't think it's a huge issue. Like, it's not something, people aren't harassed every day during the hallway, I don't think. Like, there's not fights breaking out. It's certainly worse at different schools.
No one ever speaks about it, or no one ever speaks out, and I think that there should be harsher consequences to things that they say.
Honestly, I don't really think they take it that seriously. I've never heard of anyone really being punished for bullying.
I think that cyberbullying kind of has just overpowered, just because it's so easy to go behind a screen and say whatever you want to that person.
Quite frankly, I feel like there's almost no consequences enforced at this school. I almost never hear about it. We have the occasional seminar on it, but really that doesn't hit home with anybody. And quite frankly, there's definitely bullying at the school. I've known of numerous occasions where cyberbullying has happened, and there's not much a lot of people can do about that. But there's not, like, I haven't seen a whole lot of physical bullying or social bullying, but I think cyberbullying is definitely an issue at the school.
It's really positive and negative. It's positive in the fact that if you don't understand something in your homework assignment or such, you can just research it online and find out about it like that. It's negative for the fact that if you don't understand something, you can just look it up online and copy down an answer. Like, Yahoo Answers almost has like answers for almost any like homework question you'll ever have.
The internet keeps us connected with everything we love. It makes everything so easy. It makes learning things more easy.
I think there is, for sure, like, especially with homework, you can post your homework online.
It's really great to be able to use online sources and be able to get information that quickly. But I also think it does become a distraction sometimes when you can have access so easily to things like Twitter and Facebook.
I am not quite sure what I want to do in the future, but I definitely want to go to university, probably U1 at the U of M, so.
Hopefully to go to university.
Oh, I would like to become a radiologist. It's a kind of a doctor, medical doctor. After high school, I'm done, hopefully get my IB diploma. I can hopefully skip the first year of university, do some accelerated courses, and finish university to get my master's.
Currently, I plan on going into the Faculty of Engineering at U of M.
As in a way, you want to make your parents proud, and you want to give back to them for, taking that journey and coming all the way here just for you.
I just want to, make my parents proud of me, because I know they worked really hard to, because I live in Garden City, so it takes a while for my parents, in grade 9 they drove me out here, but my dad gave me a car and he worked with me to drive, so I got my license my first try so I can drive out here, and they work really hard for me to be able to have this opportunity. So the fact that I just want to pay that back, like for internship, I'm just going to pay back like all the university costs for the years I worked there.
I would say Mr. Too Good. He's just such a nice guy, and honestly, I hate math probably more than anything in this world, and he makes it enjoyable.
Mr. Ramu, for the fact that he's able to make you feel like you're not really learning in the way like Bill Nye videos, like you had fun watching them and you still learned a lot. Mr. Medeiros, he's just a super kind-hearted guy. Mr. Young is just like super smart and he's able to just sit in the classroom and gives you good practice for university. And just, you learn so much in that class. And you have Dr. Mishler and other teachers that are just also really smart and able to teach you a lot of things. And Ms. Carnelson too, well, really smart.
Miss Green was an excellent teacher. Missy Martin taught me everything I know about social studies and history and kind of like life.
If I had to go with best teachers, I have to go with Miss Davidson.
I'm going to miss a lot of the teachers that I feel like I've bonded with over the years, but at the same time, getting closer to the end, I just really want to be done. More so with the work aspect than with the people here, but I will miss coming here every day. I honestly would think that it's a great school. I'm going to have a lot of good memories, mostly due to the teachers that I've had. I think we have a lot of great teachers at this school who are pretty relaxed and fair, and I think that that is going to stick out to me the most.
The people. I think that the people are so amazing here.
Not to be cheesy, because this is what everybody says, but it would be kind of like the community here. Like, there's a real sense of that. Like, last year was the year I really started joining I joined choir last year, and that prompted me to join all the other choirs, and plus musical and holiday breakfast. And that's when I really started like branching out and meeting new people, and you really get to see like how kind everybody is here. And yeah, it's just a big family kind of, Kelvin.
Everyone here is just so different that you can't really say, oh, I'm only going to be friends with this certain type of people, or I'm only going to talk to these certain type of people, because then you just be missing out on so much.
Everybody says this, but the people at Kelvin are great. They're, for the most part, very accepting, and they make for a great high school experience.
My name's Chris Young, and I was at Kelvin High School from 1992 to 1994.
My name is Michelle Davidson. I went to Kelvin High School from the fall of 1989 till June of 1992, because we only had grades 10 to 12.
My name's Grant Mitchell. I'm a lawyer in Winnipeg. I've been with the same law firm for 35 years, and I went to Kelvin High School as a student here from 1966 to 69, so I experienced the 60s at Kelvin High School.
Yeah, I was a basketball player. I played basketball for all 3 years when I was at Kelvin. It's pretty much my main extracurricular.
One of the amenities of joining the drama club is that you get free tickets to the Manitoba Theatre Centre. Well, my parents were spending good dollars to go to the Manitoba Theatre Centre, and I thought, I can't resist a bargain like that. I'm in the drama club. I've never done anything dramatic before, but I'll join the drama club. So I joined the drama club.
I was involved in a number of things. I sang in the choir. I was in the chamber ensemble. I played on the volleyball team in grade 10. I had the lead in the musical in grade 11. That was fun. I participated in some student council activities. We still had dances, so I sold a lot of dance tickets.
I was really keen on sports, but I wasn't a very good athlete. All of the boys in the class run around the grounds of Kelvin High School just as they are today, as fast as they could. And I came in second. And there were several members of the cross-country team who finished behind me. That was in September of 1966, and I've been a competitive runner ever since. I've run 20 full marathons, and I set records in grade 11, some of which I think may still stand, but I check every year to see the field day results to see who beat my times.
Oh, definitely in my era it was Grant Park. I guess just simply because the two schools were in the area and a lot of the students at Kelvin knew the students at Grant Park. I grew up playing against a lot of those guys.
Well, I don't think we had rivalries with anyone, because I think we just assumed that we were the best at everything. Grant Park would often beat us in track and field. Like, they had a really, really strong track and field, and the boys soccer team would have to go up against SJR in the finals every year.
Of course, I think in terms of track and the really good track teams were at Tech Voc and Daniel Mack. Grant Park was a rival just because they were the neighboring school.
So as terms of like specific rivalries, not really, sort of just in, but no, we didn't really think anyone compared.
Who were our rivals? Depended on what the activity was. Long hair was very big. I had curly hair, which is extremely unfashionable at the time. My hair grew straight out instead of down. Some people with curly hair ironed their hair so it would make it straighter. The object essentially was to look like the Beatles.
I would say in that era, rolled up t-shirt sleeves, that was very popular.
When I look back on them now, as I look at your books, they're old pictures of friends and stuff, I sort of wonder what genius decided that that was attractive.
Actually, it wasn't so bad. It was a little disappointing for mothers because we were wearing a lot of like baggy jeans and plaid shirts and Doc Marten boots, and we were angry, and it was kind of, start of grunge when I was here, so a lot of plaid shirts all around.
Come to school with these t-shirts and with the rolled up sleeves and showing off my not big muscles at all. So yeah, that was, when I look back at that, that was kind of funny. I remember I would have certain days where I just decided that I would gel back my hair, kind of 1950s look. I'm not sure if that was really the fashion at the time, but for whatever reason I would do that. And that kind of horrifies me now when I think about it. Overall, I guess I don't really notice a huge difference in fashion between the 90s and now. I guess generally speaking, maybe students are wearing fewer clothes than they were in the 90s. But my impression is that students these days think a bit more about fashion.
You go back centuries and alcohol would be a factor, and at almost any age, I think, depending on the sector of the school community, it would have been of interest. Drugs in the 50s were unknown, but part of the Beatles, the pop culture, the rock band culture, introduced drugs. LSD was a big drug in the 60s. Certainly marijuana became prominent, which it hadn't been in the 50s.
I don't know about perceived. I mean, obviously there were kids that drank at parties and there were kids that, smoked drugs, but I didn't really hang out with the kids who smoked drugs, so I'm not really sure what they thought about it, but we were kind of oblivious to them, I think.
Alcohol and drugs were definitely at Kelvin. There was definitely a bit of a drug scene for sure, and I think some students were definitely drinking as well.
But I remember one of my contemporaries who was heavily into the drug culture used to pull his car up on the street outside Kelvin, open up the trunk of his car, and it was like a buffet, and people would come and they'd say, I'll take 2 of those and 1 of those, and I'm not sure how he got away with it.
Definitely when I was here, alcohol and drugs were perceived as taboo in terms of the school. But there was a sense that, some students were doing that, and I'm sure some students have always been doing that, throughout the whole 100 years of the school's history.
It seemed like a very openly drug culture, and people were interested in the experiments that people were doing with LSD, acid, I guess they called it, and marijuana. So it was a novelty, and it was exciting to some people.
It's different when you're looking at it from the other side, right? Like when you're a teenager, you're like, oh, they worry about us for no reason. But then when you see some of the things that kids do when they drink too much at a party, right, their decision making gets really bad. So I think adults have always worried about drugs and alcohol with their teenagers because it's an awkward time. You're sort of almost grown up, but don't have enough experience with those sort of things to keep yourself safe all the time. So.
Getting the self-confidence to interact with people of the sex that was of interest to you. Nobody would have admitted they were interested in someone of the same sex, so it's of the opposite sex. Sports was a good way to distract myself from how insecure I felt.
I think it was the cliques. That hasn't changed. You had cliques in the 60s, you had cliques in the 80s, you had cliques in the 90s, and you definitely have cliques now. I think for me, high school wasn't too bad because IB was a nice, it was a nice program to be in terms of kind of giving you a bit of an identity?
I remember feeling insecure about a bunch of things, right? But now that I look back on it, the peer pressure was more in my head. Like it was my own duck quacking, right? Like my desire to have people like me and my desire to fit in, but it's not like everyone was like, hey, Michelle, if you don't do this, you can't, right? Like there was no, like we see on TV, we see kids bullying each other into doing stuff. Like I never experienced any of that, but that didn't mean that I didn't feel a desire to fit in with my peers.
And I know that can be really hard for high school students. And that's the one thing that's such a beautiful thing about university, because that's just not really a reality in university.
I don't know that the friendships I made in my 20s, 30s, 40s had the same profound impact on my life. And I can still remember detailed events of things that happened in those years because my feelings were so intense and I felt so vulnerable and I was so unsure of myself and wanting to be successful at something and not knowing where I was going or how I was going to get there or any of those things.
I think the similarity is that teenagers are teenagers. And that will never change. I think a lot of the same anxieties that teenagers have are the same. Things like getting a boyfriend or getting a girlfriend, or the stress of school, or the pressure that you get at home from your parents. I think all of that is very similar.
In terms of peer pressure, I don't think. I think it's probably the same for you all as it was for us. Is that you feel a pressure, but mostly it's your perception of what, people probably aren't talking about you.
My grandfather used to say that every successive generation has to learn that a fire is hot. And I don't think it matters what decade you grow up in, your adolescence is going to be a time when you really formulate your attitudes, your anxieties, your ambitions, your interests, your judgments about your behavior.
I do think in a lot of ways being a teenager now is harder than it was when I was in school and before, because of the whole social media aspect of your lives. I mean, that's just something that we did not have to deal with. We didn't have to deal with Facebook. We didn't have to deal with Twitter. We didn't have to deal with the pressures of that.
Although this whole Facebook texting instant information thing is different, so it might be harder for you than it was for us, because it takes 3 days for a rumor to get through the school when you have to do it the old-fashioned way. Hey, did you hear? Did you hear? Whereas for you, it takes like one tweet. Everybody knows. So.
I don't think it matters what decade it is. I think that's what adolescents go through. And hopefully they get through it and they become happy adults and successful adults after that.
We didn't talk about bullying very much. I think that's one thing that's great for you guys, is that there's a much bigger focus on, we had a peer support group, right? And so the peer support group did a lot of, sitting around talking about people's experiences. But there certainly wasn't this campaign, to protect people from bullying. And so that's one place where high school's definitely gotten better. Maybe the level of bullying is the same, but at least now we're acknowledging that it's there, and we're not saying, oh, kids will be kids, or oh, boys will be boys, and that, you know what I mean? Like, we're not just accepting bad behavior as a rite of passage of being a young person, that we could do better than that.
Bullying certainly occurred at Kelvin when I was here. I'm sure bullying has occurred in every single year of Kelvin's history. The whole concept of recognizing bullying and trying to deal with bullying, that's something that's really taken off in the last, I'd say, 10, 15 years.
Bullying was bad. The first thing you did when you were in grade 10 was to have a freshie queen contest. So you were supposed to pick the prettiest girl in your class. There was a vote. And the prettiest girl in your class ran off against the prettiest girl in all the other classes, and then a freshie queen for the whole school was picked.
I don't remember it really being talked about by teachers and administrators.
There was another fellow in my grade 8 class who was gay, who was extremely bright, who committed suicide before he was in grade 12. There was no such word as gay. Overall, I think kids treated each other fairly well, but there were definitely examples where kids got bullied, and there was no infrastructure to support kids who were going through that.
There were certainly kids who probably felt marginalized when I went to high school. And, in a different way than I did, when I felt I didn't fit in, as I said, like, it was mostly me just thinking people cared about things they didn't care about. But there were certainly kids who didn't fit in to the, standard deviation of what we'd consider normal, and I'm sure high school was difficult for them.
I think there's much more awareness of diversity and acceptance of it, and there is more diversity.
I remember Mr. Harrison always brought his guitar, even though it was IB English, and sang ballads. Thought that was entertaining. Miss Teskey, when was trying to teach us iambic pentameter, wore these crazy clogs, and she went stomping across the front of the room, going da-dum, 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 da-dum. You know, those are the things I will never forget. Iambic pentameter. Thank you, Miss Teskey.
I go back to my basketball experience. The most memorable educator for me was Jaime Fox. It was him as a coach and as a mentor, and this was just a really exceptional human being. And I'm still friends with him. He just came by, Kelvin, actually, a few days ago.
I didn't have Mr. Akins, but he was here, and he was really well liked and well respected.
Rudy Engbrecht was most memorable, had the most powerful impact on me, and as I say, has continued to be a friend.
In terms of the academic world at Kelvin, I'd say the most memorable teacher for me was Paul Normando, who was my grade 12 history teacher. His class really inspired me to continue doing history in university.
In grade 10, we had a teacher by the name of Dennis September. He was an African who had moved from South Africa. He says, I come to Winnipeg, I go to a supermarket, and I look at these huge long aisles, endless amounts of varieties and brands. One entire aisle, nothing but hundreds of different brands of pet food. That's 1966, he told us that story, and here I am repeating it 50 years later.
I had really great teachers. I mean, it was, academic excellence was expected and encouraged, and we worked hard. And
there were a lot of there were a lot of not very good teachers, but there were a lot of very good teachers, and it wasn't all about learning the curriculum. Sometimes it was learning about life.
I didn't look much beyond university, and so, yeah, my goal was to get to university.
Well, my first goal would have been to be an Olympic gold medalist, but I realized early on that wasn't going to happen.
I was interested in history and I was interested in politics, but I really had no clue what I wanted to do with my life, which I think is very common for high school students.
Well, I wanted to be a math teacher, but there were no jobs in teaching, so I became an engineer for a while until the baby boomers started to retire.
I was pretty sure I was going to do something academic after. I wasn't sure what. I actually went to work in a mine after I graduated.
I started to think, well, teaching could be something that I think I would like and I think I could be pretty good at. I do not think I ever thought about teaching as an option.
And I tried practice teaching for a couple of months, and I impulsively decided that it wasn't for me, and then I went to law school.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the IB program was really good. I had some excellent teachers. IB absolutely taught me how to, prepare myself for university.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't learn anything new in first year engineering calculus until about March. And it only goes until May.
I definitely learned a lot, sort of in spite of my horrible study habits. I was with a group of friends who were, I could rattle off what they do. They're an incredible group of people, the world leaders, world-renowned people. Kelvin produced a lot of those. And I probably learned as much from my classmates as I did from my students or from the curriculum.
I remember vividly going to first year university and thinking, this is going to be really hard because everyone says it's going to be really hard, and looking around and thinking to myself, wow, this is actually a lot easier than grade 12 IB.
I was really well prepared, and I went straight into engineering, and even though we didn't have grade 13, when I went to high school, Ontario had grade 13, like they do these OACs before they could get to college. I still got into engineering at Waterloo, and like all the schools I applied to in Ontario, my teachers just wrote me a letter saying that I had covered enough of the topics so I got straight into engineering at Waterloo, even though I hadn't taken grade 13.
I would say the total educational experience was very effective. I would say that what I learned in the classroom was a portion of that, but maybe not even the largest portion.
People ask me that question a lot, like, oh, how does it feel teaching at the same high school you went to? and frankly, it feels like different realities.
And not so much as a full circle, but it's definitely interesting to see it from this side. Like, you know, I appreciate more now how great a school I went to when I was here, when I see how much work it takes to encourage people to rise to that level, right?
It's so different now than it was when I was there.
When I look at my class, sometimes I can see my classmates. I'm like, oh, you're not exactly like, but you remind me of, and you remind me of, and you remind me of. And so I sort of think that even though every generation thinks they're unique and things are different, that I think for the most part, people are people.
I've always had this connection with Kelvin because I was here, and then basically right out of high school, I started coaching at Kelvin. So went right through my undergrad, I was coaching basketball here.
No, it's a privilege and an honor to work here. It's a fantastic place. It's got great kids.
Kelvin's always been a good school, and Kelvin's always produced amazing graduates. Kelvin's always had great teachers, and I think Kelvin has always provided students with amazing skills for them to succeed after high school.
Yes, you're going to get a really great education here, and you're going to get into a really great university, even if you don't have grade 13. But with that privilege comes a social responsibility, and I really like that Kelvin has a lot of that. There's a much greater awareness of the world outside of River Heights. You know, when I went to Kelvin, it was pretty much, you know, this little bubble.
I would say the number one thing I got out of Kelvin was friendships. Like I say, I grew up with some phenomenal people, and they're still phenomenal today. I don't know if that's something that ever changes. The education I got, the sports development I got, those kind of things kind of pale in comparison to the relationships that were built here.
Other than, are you different at 17 than we were at 17? No. In fact, you're still playing the same song to warm up at basketball games. Like, you need a new soundtrack. Like, that CD's been here since, it's a CD. Yeah, it's been here since like 1990. You need a new song for basketball warm up. Come on now. House of Pain, gotta go. It's over.
It's an environment to share experiences and share feelings, and when I say feelings, I'm not talking about romantic feelings, any kind of feelings, and to go through the challenges of growing up together. It was a very good environment to do it. It was a peaceful environment. It was exciting. There were lots of very bright, very stimulating people, and some very, very good teachers who supported that. They were a catalyst for what we learned.
I think those students have skills that will allow them to, you know, travel the world, that will allow them to succeed in university, that will give them incredible perspectives, different perspectives, multiple perspectives on all sorts of issues. I think we graduate students who are very tolerant, who are very open-minded, who are hardworking, and just, yeah, I think students who will have a lot of success later on in life.
My name is George Akins. I'm in the English department, and I've taught at Kelvin for about 25 years.
This is my 7th year as principal, and in the 90s I was here for, I think it was 7 years as vice principal. When I first arrived, Kelvin had 860 students. It was grades 10 to 12. Mm-hmm. And we were called then a non-semestered school.
Overall, I don't find the students terribly changed at all. You get, I think essentially it's a pretty standard sort of thing. That doesn't mean you wear the same, sometimes blue hair is in, sometimes blue hair is out, sometimes it's mohawks, sometimes it's whatever, 20 earrings.
And then at one point we went to a 5-slot timetable, and that was a huge upheaval in the place. And then we went to adding grade 9s here, which probably the first year we jumped from about 900 to 1,200 kids, and since then it's been growing.
There is a change in the population. There used to be some groups, like say the Jewish groups, were like a large portion of the school of them came to the school And they don't now, and I gather it's because of the Rady Center and that sort of stuff.
Certainly when I arrived in the 90s, Kelvin was this South End school. I would say the vast majority of kids were white, Anglo-Saxon, European ancestry. And I don't have figures with me now, but that's dramatically changed. If you sit down and take a look at an assembly now and all the kids are here, it's one of the strengths of the school, I think, is we've got just such a wide range of kids and mix. And for the most part, I think that has worked out pretty well.
Other groups have come in, and so slowly but surely, you know, Kelvin is filled with different kinds of people than used to be here.
I think there has always been a focus on academics here.
Well, I think it's always been two things. It's on one hand a very good academic school. It's a very sound academic school. Parents send their kids to Kelvin because it's a strong academic school.
I can say before I even started at Kelvin, years before, I started teaching at a high school called St. John's, and people said this was the worst it's ever been. You know, the academic standards had gone downhill. Kids are nothing like they were in the past. I think consistently we've always said that every year, so therefore I don't think it's true.
If the parents send their kids to school for a good education, I think the kids want to come to Kelvin. It's a popular school, probably because I think it's a pretty good place to go socially. I've almost never known a kid that didn't find himself or herself happy in the social situation at Kelvin.
I think for the average kid in this building, which is 85% of them, they're not hugely different. They're interested in their school, probably not as much as we'd like them to be, but they're interested in their school. So that really hasn't changed dramatically.
Easier for students nowadays. Well, we say that kids come into our class and your name is on the list, and so therefore you expect to pass, you know, without doing any work. But I don't think that's in fact changed any from the past.
You're probably the first group that has grown up completely with the internet constantly being wired in at all times. I would find that a challenge. I don't think there's any quiet time for people anymore. I don't see anyone ever by themselves anymore. You guys are just constant distractions. So how you guys study, I'm not sure. But certainly someone's phoning in or someone's texting or your phone's going off.
I don't think it's very much different from what it was before. On one hand, I think the regular courses more or less go almost unnoticed. Everybody says, well, you know, things used to be harder, things used to be better, but I think that's usually memory. They're remarkably the same for year in and year out. So I don't think things change that much. Hard for them, I think that in almost all courses at some point, I think a lot of learning gets consolidated at least after February. You know, suddenly you realize, oh, I'm in a course and I have to do something.
I think, and I could be wrong here, I think we adapt to kids' needs much greater than we did before. I think before it was sink or swim or sink, and for a lot of kids, and I don't think schools are like that anymore. I think schools probably do a better job now than they did before. I think the struggles kids face today are probably not dramatically different than they did 20 years ago, 40 years, 60 years ago, and most of those struggles tend to be social struggles. How am I going to fit in with the group? Who are my friends? Who are my friends today as opposed to tomorrow? I think the same social issues face you guys, which you guys think are brand new because of Facebook, etc., etc. In reality, we're faced 20 years ago and 40 years ago is maybe different technology, but I think the same struggles with growing up. I think you probably grow up a lot faster now, right. But I don't think the struggles are dramatically different. The self-doubt, where are we going, where's the world going to be, the world is changing so rapidly we can't keep up. I think even though 40, 50 years ago maybe we didn't think the world was changing that rapidly, or maybe the world wasn't changing rapidly, we thought it was. You know, it's a completely different world than our parents. Every group of kids will think their time is completely unique and it's completely different and their parents will never understand. And then they'll become parents.
Well, it certainly provides a wonderful social context. I came from Toronto originally, so, you know, and I came as a graduate student. And I had no expectation of becoming a teacher, but I kept, every time you met somebody, you'd feel, I'm from Kelvin. I'm from Kelvin. And you know, you'd meet somebody and they'd say they're from Kelvin, and you think, who cares? Well, obviously, you know, now that I am in Kelvin, I think it does matter a lot.
I hope it gave you a sense of belonging. I hope it gave you some good friends. I hope it gave you a somewhat safe environment to grow up in. Quite honestly, those changes from when you walked into grade 9 to you're leaving in grade 12 have been huge, just huge for every single one of you. Hopefully we provided you, you know, an education.
It's a pretty good place to go, and I think that most people are pretty proud of having been here and probably proud of what they achieved here. They also make some pretty good social contacts that seem to be very stable.
I would say the average grade 9 is different than the average grade 12, and that's 4 years. I don't think the average 40-year-old is dramatically different at 50.
Right.
I don't think the average 50-year-old is dramatically different at 60. Certainly you guys, when you walked in at 13, walking out at 18, that 4 years is dramatically different.
People who, you know, if I meet somebody from, say, 20 years ago, as I often do, you'd say, well, who have you seen that I would know? And they often see 5 or 6 people still, you know, and they'll say no one's around it, but then it turns out they're in constant contact with these people. So obviously they got something out of it that's worth memory.
But hopefully we provided you a place to grow up in too, where you got to meet some people, you got to try some things out, you got to do this and do that, and you came away a little more mature than you walked in grade 9. So